I first gave this talk at the Shoreline Construction Retreat 2024 in Savannah, Georgia. It's entitled The Gift of Your Presence. I'll never forget riding in the back of a Toyota pickup on the back dirt roads of Kogi State in Nigeria with a friend of mine named Babangida. We had been working together in his home culture on a variety of projects and had developed a friendship where I could ask him some intentional questions. I asked, Babangida, we spent a lot of money to come here. Would you prefer it if we just sent the money instead of us coming? He looked at me with a firm stare and responded simply, your presence is worth far more than your money ever will be. In 1906, a young man named Philo Farnsworth was born into a Mormon family living in rural Utah. As Farnsworth grew, he had an increased interest in electronics and physics, and eventually Farnsworth applied to the Naval Academy and joyfully accepted due to his scores, which at the time were the second highest in Naval Academy history. Within a few months, Farnsworth sought honorable discharge due to the fact that his father had died, and probably even more significant, that the government would own any patents that he applied for so long as he was on the military payroll. You see, Farnsworth had a knack for inventing things, and one of the things that he would go on to introduce to the world with the help of some San Franciscan philanthropist was a small invention called the television. Now, the television began sweeping the nation in the 1950s. John Steinbeck said in the opening of his book, Travels with Charlie, when I was very young, the urge to be someplace else was on me. And in his 50s, the urge never left, which led to the book, Travels with Charlie. But in that invention, radio, television, they allowed us the magical opportunity to, in the words of Steinbeck, be someplace else and never leave the thickly carpeted or plastic-covered living rooms of our grandparents' generation. For the next few decades, we had wars and rumors of wars. It was hearkening back to Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, when we had Hemingway, Eichmann's Stranger in a Strange Land, Dylan, Berlin, Bay of Pigs Invasion, Lawrence of Arabia, British Beatlemania, Ole Miss, John Glenn, Liston beats Patterson, Pope, Paul, Malcolm X, British politician sex, JFK, blown away. What else do I have to say? And he went on to say we didn't start the fire. We had the personal computer, the internet bubble, 9/11, school shootings. All of these things were in play. Take Billy Joel's song, take those big significant events in personal computing in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, and yet they saw just sort of a marginal movement in mental illness. And then something really big happened. But before I go any further, I want to share a resource with you. It's a book entitled The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness by Jonathan Haidt. Some things I'm about to relay may churn your mind and stir your heart a bit. By the way, we have a hot tub at home. Just the other day, after a month or so of violent pollen plague in our community, I cleaned out the hot tub filter, leaving pollen dots all around the hot tub, and eventually they settled. It was only when those pollen bits were stirred that I was able to actually clean them out. One of my goals is to help you stir the water of your attention. It's one of the most valuable gifts we've been given. Our attention, that is. We can renew almost everything in life, but we cannot renew time and attention, for it will sprout wings, take flight, and fly away. There are 4 primary takeaways from the book that I think might be helpful to understanding that book was written in the context of our urge to be someplace else. We had the radio, we had the television, but those have marked the dawn of something new. Right now, I think it's important to understand that I am generally void of the gift of your presence, and you are void of the gift of mine. Yeah, I know you're here listening to this right now, and I'm here recording this for you, but Steinbeck's words are the driving sentiment every time we scroll, declaring that we have the urge to be someplace else. Remember, something big's happened. Author and podcaster Brent Hansen said, attention is the currency of our lives, the things that matter most. You pay attention like we pay to attend an event. The goal of this talk, this time together, is to gently and clearly compel and invite us back to the undistracted community where we can reclaim the joy of being human beings together. Husbands, wives, friends, children, cousins, and coworkers. An invitation to notice human inflection, to see human hurt, to feel human joy. Instead, our attention has been hijacked so that we Photoshop digital inflection, we scroll through edited hurt, and we meticulously inflate digital joy, while time and attention get sacrificed on an infinite altar of premeditated behavior modification rooted in addiction science, studied and gushing out of Silicon Valley. We're being sold to those promising the purest dopamine hits, and there's finally a small movement of intelligent souls crying in the wilderness, begging to make straight paths. What do I want to cause with this talk? I'd like for you and me to think about our thinking, to turn around from our screens and to see human life that we are missing by scrolling our digital life. The four purposes of Haidt's book, which come in the wake of this technological boom. Number one, he explains the nature of childhood and how we've messed it up. Second, he explains the harms that result from the new phone-based childhood as opposed to a play-based childhood. Third, Haidt explains what we must do to reverse the damage in our families, schools, and societies. And yes, he would say that there has been damage caused. It was innocent for the most part, but damage has been caused. And the fourth purpose of the book, The Anxious Generation, is to encourage us that change is possible if we can take that change in collective action. Isolation rarely works. First, I want to go back to the date. Remember, I said something big happened. Somewhere in the 2010s, between 2010 and 2013, that seems to be the years that will be recalled well into the future. A bit of a perfect storm hit in those years. Although the iPhone, really think of it as a smartphone with apps, came out in 2007, it was not until around 2012 that it became common among teens. In 2013, phone carriers began offering unlimited phone and text plans, shortly followed by unlimited data plans. In 2012, Facebook purchased Instagram, and just 2 years prior to 2012, the iPhone went to market with the first smartphone-based front-facing camera, or at least the first one to really make it on a smartphone. This merging of historically unlimited technology led to the opening of the digital Golden Corral buffet line of social connectivity, while we all looked around and began telling everyone the food looked great, and yet we felt like garbage every time we ate there. In the same way diabetes began dramatically increasing in response to a processed fast food diet, mental health quietly decreased and deteriorated to the fast food diet of digital technology. From 2010 to 2020, mental illness among college students increased 134%, even higher if you just consider the ages 18 to 25. From 2010 to 2020, depression increased by 106%, ADHD by 72%. Emergency room visits for self-harm among girls have increased 188%. Suicide rates for boys, 91%, and 167% for girls. You might ask, well, wasn't that just the pandemic? Actually, no, you can see a pandemic spike as well, that's for sure, but only after these incidences had already begun to spike. So what happened? Jonathan Haidt believes that we migrated from a play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood, and in doing so, the brain of the child was rewired in a way that values technical productivity and boredom alleviation instead of presence. Sherry Turkle, the great author of Reclaiming Conversations, believes technology has helped cure us of talking. She highlights the world's largest conference call provider. It's used by 85% of Fortune 100 firms, and discovered that during those meetings, 65% of us do other work. 64% of us send emails. 55% eat or make food. During these calls, 47% of us go to the bathroom, and 6% take other phone calls entirely. I want you to think about the feeling of the meeting facilitator, the one who put in all the work to call the meeting, to lead the meeting, and that facilitator reckoning with the reality that they are entirely uninteresting. No wonder we second-guess ourselves. Where is the hope? And what is the point? How do we reclaim our human connection? I want to go back and remind you of my goal. This time together right now is a time to gently and clearly compel and invite us back to the undistracted community where we can reclaim the joy of being human beings together. Husbands, wives, friends, children, cousins, and co-workers. It's an invitation to notice human inflection, to see human hurt, to feel human joy. Now, I've got some good news in the midst of some challenging mountains for us to climb. The brain can be rewired, and we have the choice to jump out of our digital personas and into the true human we were designed to be, where I have the honor of your attention and you have the honor of mine. You remember that old phrase, don't you? Can I have your attention, please? Never before have we had to think so hard about our response. You'll be tempted to think this is a talk about winning our kids back. No, it's not. Is this a make our kids great again chant? No, it's not that either. This talk is a talk to encourage us to be present around the table, to be present in team meetings, present on back porches, present at a cheer competition, present while on the phone with a friend, and not continuing to crank out email. Remember, your presence is worth far more than your money, your success, your productivity. Your presence is worth far more than you responding to the latest, loudest voice crying out through the evil conduit of email. Hate suggests 4 macro initiatives that can set a reclaiming foundation to our genuine connection with other people. First, voluntary coordination. Adults getting together and committing to one another simple things like we will leave our phones away at the dinner table. Something simple, but collective. Second, it's the idea to create social norms and moralization, much like has happened around a community getting together to push back on drunk driving. How can we collectively create a new social norm around leveraging our technology? Third, technological solutions like new types of phones that provide healthy boundaries and reduce pressure on both parents and children, although tech companies are rarely incentivized to this end. And fourth is governmental policy and legislation. But what can we do collectively? And what can I do individually to see you and for you to see me and we connect human to human? My wife Ashley and I spent some time thinking through this, and we've come up with some basic steps. These are not gold standard steps, but ideas that we can begin to take collectively that, if held to, would keep our eyes up. They would keep our ears open. They would keep our hearts available to each other in a world of a disheartened isolation. A first opportunity is to go big at home. What does that mean? Well, begin in gratitude, which is already at the core of many of the businesses we have the opportunity to work with. To begin in gratitude can become the hallmark, not just during internal meetings, but also subcontractor meetings, client meetings, vendor meetings, gatherings, and other connecting points in business, but also around the table at work. It's easy to go big, and it's intentionally meant to rewire our brains to see a little sunshine on a cloudy day. The idea big came from Dan Sullivan, B-I-G, begin in gratitude. It's to share something big that's happened to you personally, professionally in the last day, 2 days, or 1 week. Make a habit of it. The next thing is we can acknowledge thankfulness and consistently handwrite thank you notes. Handwritten notes are a shock to the recipient precisely because they are analog. It's as if I can see and feel your personality and your humanness in the unique squiggles of your own handwriting. The third thing you can do is to set time limits on your social media, and then don't adjust them. Begin considering how you feel when you've hit your limit. What is that emotion telling you about your habits, your boundaries, and more importantly, your presence to other people? Fourth, start your day with simple and quiet reflection and introspection. No digital technology, just ask yourself, where am I right now? This helps acknowledge what feelings, fears, burdens, and ideas you're bringing into your day. You can literally think about your thinking. Social media curates a story of your life telling me that you have no fear, you have no worries, you have no challenges, but instead you have a life of kids with perfect smiles and a body without blemish. It's good to feel your humanity so that you can help me feel mine. So we can start our day reflecting so that we can feel that before we start to be bombarded with the reality of what's not true. Fifth, you can find your people. You have friends, but if you have friends, spend intentionally wasteful time with those friends. If you don't have friends, find a hobby that has people, a gym, play pickleball, join a book club, something where people gather to where you can develop friends, cultivate friends in the presence of another person. But when do I have time to do all of this? Well, when you hold yourself to social media boundaries, you might free up another hour or 2 hours per day. So there you go. Now there's 2 more ideas that might be helpful. Number 6, commit to keeping your phones away from the table at meals. We can practice that today. Simon Sinek, the great thinker and writer, thoughtfully shows that when our phone is on the table, even if it's turned over, we communicate that you are not the most important thing to me right now. It's a little bit of a gut punch, but it's true. Finally, a phrase that we heard years ago and work hard to implement in our family, especially when you're most busy. It's something you can adopt as well. And it goes like this: dialogue daily, date weekly, depart quarterly, dream annually. Dialoguing daily is when you sit down intentionally, no technology, face to face, and you have chair time. You just talk. What if you're distant from your partner? Well, hop on FaceTime. Turn all the notifications off. Just sit there with your hands folded in front of you and just talk. In Nigeria, they have a phrase called ekujoku. You are sitting well. I remember sitting in a friend of mine's house in Kogi State in Nigeria, and we had not talked for about a minute or 2 minutes. There was silence. And he responded to me, ekujoku. You are sitting well. In other words, you're comfortable in my home, comfortable enough not to have to say anything. The second thing we can do is date weekly. This doesn't just mean going out to an expensive dinner. You could put the kids to bed and cook dinner at home together and sit with no distraction and have conversation. Third, depart quarterly. Go somewhere else together. Go camp together. Go to an inexpensive hotel with a pool together. Go to a friend's lake house or go to the Ritz. Wherever you want to go. Go somewhere overnight and adventure together. And do it once a quarter. And then finally, dream annually. Once a year, sit down and create a calendar. Create your financial barn and review your family vision together. When you do this, you'll start to converse. You'll start to sit in the presence of one another and discuss the pits and the peaks of life. And in doing this, you can begin to engage with one another. You can start to hearken back to the goal that we have together, and that is to gently and clearly compel and invite us back to the undistracted community where we can reclaim the joy of being human beings together, an invitation to notice human inflections, to see human hurt, to feel human joy, and to live in a life of joy together, where you enjoy the gift of my presence and I enjoy the gift of yours.